Good evening. I call this Merritt City Council regular meeting to order, dated October 13th, 2020. There are no late items. Public hearing. Public input. Let me rephrase that. Public input. Sorry, Mr. Lois. We're going to keep the timing to 2 minutes for public input. We have first Lindsay Fair on item 8.2.
Hello, I'm Lindsay Fair.
Can I have you turn the button on your mic?
I need a mic. My loud voice?
Yes.
My name is Lindsay Fair. I am Councillor Fair's wife, but he did not tell me anything. I'm here to talk about the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which is no secret that I am vehemently against for several reasons. Tonight I wanted to talk about their offer to build us a wastewater treatment facility because it is a bribe. It looks like corporate citizenship. The Trans Mountain Company is a federally owned Crown corporation. Our tax dollars are already paying for it. So anything they offer to build us is coming out of our pocket anyway. It makes them look great. They don't deserve it. That's really all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we've got, oh, never mind, I'm in the wrong section. Craig Gray, on 2 items.
Your Worship, Councillors, my name is Craig Gray, I live at 1951 Merritt Avenue. I have 2 concerns tonight. One is the same as what the previous speaker was talking about, was the water treatment plant. I seem to remember being in front of council 2 weeks ago and there were lots of jokes about the water and everything else. Well, here we go one more time. We'll welcome somebody new to the community who's actually only going to be here for a very short period of time, and we offer to build them a water treatment facility. Where's this miraculous water going to come from when the cold water does what the cold water does most years and give us a drought prior to the fish coming up? That's my first concern. And I really, it ties in with the committees. The promise of this council was to set up committees. We have, I believe, 3 functioning committees. We have the age-friendly committee, which has still not been called. The airport committee has met 3 times. So it goes back, we should have a water and river committee. This was promised and it needs to be done. The other issue is the fact of the monitoring of the effluent, the solid particular effluent that's coming out of the hog burning facility. Monitoring has been turned off. We have but you can notice it. All you need to do is just take a view out from the houses up on the bench and you can see it. Before you used to see steam coming up through there, and that was one of the ways of reducing the amount of particulate that was in the air so that they could get the particulate out. That isn't there anymore. When we were having the smoke coming in from the States, we were having smoke coming from our own facility. And that's shameful.
Gray, can I interrupt?
Certainly can.
The item that you were speaking to was 8.2?
5.2 and 8.2.
5.2 I have as...
That's on the air and quality monitoring.
Okay, thank you.
So those are the 2 issues that I feel are relatively important and need to be addressed. And the one is the committees. We need these committees up and meeting. You held a meeting tonight, a public meeting, and you pat yourself on the back and really proud that you had a public meeting, but 30 members of a 10,000 member community is not really a public meeting. And virtually the seniors, they can't even connect. So I really think that instead of running ahead with OCP and new bylaw plans, we should have committees up and meeting and have that input so we really are having public input. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Brett and Bernadette Nyeste? Yes. And- Oh, I'm sorry. I messed up. Simon Ho.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not Simon Ho. We will be having Mr. Ho, his wife Florence, and their 2 children just coming in, but I just wanted to let Council know they are our first BC PNP foreign entrepreneurs. They've come tonight to speak on an information item, I think it's 11.1, if I'm not mistaken, the quarterly report on the BC PNP committee. But because they have 2 younger children, it's probably better for them to speak at the start rather than wait until the very end of the council meeting. So,
Good call.
Yeah, just here to say hello to those councillors they haven't met yet. Perfect. Come on up, Simon. Perfect, and you can bring your whole family up.
Yes.
And yes.
Let's do it together.
Perfect. Can you just come on up?
Yeah.
Perfect, and yeah, please speak into the mic and introduce yourself. And
Okay. First of all, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to come here. Let me introduce myself. My name is Simon, and my wife Florence, Thomas, and Long Long. Say hello to everyone. Say hello. Hello. Okay.
And the entertainer.
I'm the one of the entrepreneur come here. This is under the BC nomination program, BC PNP program, that will set up a shop in Merritt. I will go to set up a sewing machine shop that including sewing machine, rental, and then some workshop to teach people, kids, to how to sewing, to handle the sewing, and then I also have some garment printer business. So that's one I will have some souvenir for tourists. Although this is not a good timing because under COVID, but yeah, in the future this is very attractive in this city. Yeah. Okay.
Well, we welcome you wholly, and thank you for choosing Merritt. And
Thank you very much.
We wish you all the very best and much success with your business.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's quite the entertainer, that little one. That's cute. Now on to adoption of the minutes, 4.1, special council meeting. I need a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the special council meeting held on September 29th, 2020 be adopted. Second? Okay. And errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed, none, and carried. So general matters with delegations and community futures. Manuel? Oh, you're over there.
Your Worship, City Councilors, thank you so much for inviting Community Futures to present tonight and talk about the BCPNP pilot program. As you know, CF Nicola Valley has been involved in this program since day one. This is because we understand the economic benefits this program will bring to our community if we do things right. Yes, we understand that the BCPNP committee is a city committee. As a result, it will be up to the City Council to decide how you want to move forward. In the letter issued to City Council, CF Nicola Valley addressed a few concerns we had experienced while dealing with this program. At the end of the letter, we had 3 requests. I'm here tonight to provide more information behind each one of the requests. Our first request was to establish a pre-screening process before issuing an invitation to these entrepreneurs to come to Merritt. Please keep in mind that the province has given the authority to each community to manage this stage of the program before issuing the community referral letter. For this reason, this program may vary from city to city. These are some of the highlights from other communities. Communities handle town hall or roundtable meetings to determine the top three priorities sectors before submitting their application to become an eligible community under this program. We didn't. Other communities started charging an application fee to compensate the time allocated to review these applications. We didn't. Other communities established a pre-screening process via video conference to determine the viability of each business idea before asking the entrepreneur to come to their city. For some entrepreneurs, money is not an issue, but we have also seen entrepreneurs using their lifetime savings in their attempt to move to Canada. In my opinion, it is not fair to invite an entrepreneur to come to Merritt for an exploratory visit when they do not have an idea how to start a business. Other communities realized that a business concept was not enough to make a decision whether or not to issue a community referral letter. As a result, they started requesting fall business plans early in this pilot program. Dealing with applications that have not been pre-screened is taking up unnecessary staff hours from all the three parties, the City of Merritt, the Chamber of Commerce, and Community Futures. Our second request was to start requesting fall business plans. We have had applicants that provided one-page business concepts. As you may know, one of the requirements for them to apply under this program is to invest at least $100,000. One-page business concept for an investment of $100,000, it's not nearly enough. As a result, the BCPNP committee was unable to make a decision, so that we have to go back to request additional information. The question here is, why did these entrepreneurs receive an invitation in the first place? The answer is that the City of Merritt is not pre-screening these applications. On the other hand, we received fall business plans for other applicants without even requesting them. This made it very difficult for the committee when assessing business plans versus business concepts. Business plans prepared by a third party. I met with some of the applicants and realized that they had not had a clue about their business idea. The business idea on paper was very good, but soon I realized that the business plan had not been prepared by them. Unable to have an interview in English. I also met with entrepreneurs that did not speak the English. As you know, English is not my first language, so I can relate to those entrepreneurs. But if the entrepreneur is unable to have a basic conversation in English, they will not be able to pass the interview with the province. Again, all this could have been avoided if we had a pre-screening process in place. We believe that the applicants will have a better chance to get approved at the provincial level if they work on a solid business plan while working with the City of Merritt, the Chamber of Commerce, and Community Futures. We also feel that the BCPNP committee is in much better position to determine which businesses have a better opportunity to succeed in our community than the province. On January 20th, 2020, the BCPNP committee made a motion to request full business plans instead of only business concepts. This motion was made by CFMB and seconded by the Chamber of Commerce. Despite Councillor Fern being against, this motion passed, but here we are going over the request again. Our third and final request was to be added as a second designated person along with the City of Merritt. Please keep in mind that the designated person varies from city to city. There are cities that appointed their EDOs as the designated contact person, as in this case. Other cities appointed organizations that had been delegated with community economic development function, such as Community Futures. Contrary to what was said at the June 16 City Council meeting, Community Futures Nicola Valley is not implying to be the only designated contact person. CFNB would like to be added as another contact person along with the City of Merritt. CF Nicola Valley feels that by asking to be added as an additional designated contact person, we would help with the workload that the city now has in administrating this program. When you have partners in a project, there is really no reason why they cannot take on other responsibilities. As part of this project, we are here for you not only to be part of the BCPNP committee, but by sharing part of the workload and responsibility that comes with the program. CF Nicola Valley believes in this program. We also believe that there can be some great businesses establishing in Merritt in the Nicola Valley. Businesses that will end up calling Merritt their home. But we need to ensure that the businesses that come to Merritt through this program have the best chance to succeed. We do not want to see them failing. In conclusion, CF Nicola Valley respects the work the City of Merritt and the Chamber of Commerce do in our community. We understand that it's easier to work as a team rather than working alone. Community Futures Nicola Valley is here tonight to invite the City of Merritt to work together for the betterment of our community. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, Councillor Christofferson.
Just trying to figure out what I need to ask here, because I think it's a valuable program. I'm a little bit concerned to hear that I think I finally understand a little bit more about the full business plans needed, not just concepts. And I think originally I thought, well, a concept was good enough, but it sounds like perhaps some pre-screening would help to eliminate applications that have been done professionally by somebody else and brought in, and that's part of what your goal is, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. And it's sad to see that there are some applicants that are seeing this program as a way to come into Canada with that intention. So I think that it's not, we shouldn't have to spend this time in applications. By having a pre-screening process, we would be removing these applications from the good ones. Thank you.
So again, if I may pursue this?
Yes.
What is happening now is that not everyone, but many applications or some applications are simply to have a doorway into Canada, and this is one avenue, whereas the program is really designed to bring in entrepreneurs that will benefit a community. Is that correct?
That's right. So the idea of this program is to encourage people from other countries to come to Canada and establish a business here. As I mentioned before, there are so many requirements, and some people may believe that this is the easy way to come to Canada and get the permanent residence. But if we request full business plans, people will have a better understanding what their market is, what are all those requirements that they need to establish a successful business in the community. We don't want to see these businesses fail. They are supposed to stay in business for 2 years. What's going to happen after the 2-year period? What's going to happen when they failed and they have spent all their lifetime savings and they have to go back to their countries where they came from because they failed in this country? We don't want that. We want to see a community that is going to prosper. but we want to make sure that that's happening by screening the right applications.
And can I interrupt for a sec? My understanding is that it's the government's job currently to look at the full business plans, not the individual community. Is that correct?
That is correct. At the meeting that I had with the province, September 2019, I expressed my concern about letting these applications get that far by requesting only a business concept at this stage and getting to later on and say, okay, you have not provided a whole business plans. My idea here is that this community, with the stakeholders, the Chamber of Commerce, community features, we can assess these applications. We can provide the business counseling for them to succeed and have a solid business idea. When we were working with the Chamber of Commerce last year, we have to do a survey to provide that information to potential entrepreneurs who were interested in coming to Merritt because they wanted to decide what is needed in our community. The province may not know what is needed to the community, but the City of Merritt, the Chamber of Commerce and Community Features does.
I understand that, but this is a pilot project. And once we look at the pilot, we can provide this information to the government to have them change the program, rather than us trying to change it at a city level.
I do have to say that the province recognized the value that Community Features is doing by requesting fall business plans. It's not only our city, there are other cities that have started requesting business plans because there is a big benefit at the end of the day.
Okay, can I ask how many applicants we had last year? 380 somewhat? You're prepared to do a review of 380 when we got one applicant out of it?
We are prepared even to provide the business counseling that they need to come up with the right business plan that is going to succeed in our community.
But to do a full business plan for them, they already have to be here, do they not?
No, I can provide event help through online platforms like social media or any other one as Zoom meetings.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Fair.
So thank you for your presentation, Mr. Ogway. And other cities, can you tell me which ones, for instance, I believe you mentioned that other cities are requesting business plans from their applicants. Can you tell me which ones?
I can get back to that on you. I can tell you that there are more than 10 cities already requesting business plans. I don't have them on top of my head, but I can provide that information easily.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. And so the pre-screening process, would that, if I may ask another question, does that include just a business plan, or did you have more in mind for that?
The pre-screening process, I have to admit, that was not my idea. When I started attending the monthly meetings, Will George and myself had the opportunity to share those good experiences, best practices with other communities. And they mentioned that they started implementing the pre-screening process to help minimize the work. Instead of receiving, I don't know, like 50 applications, they are going to receive 20 quality applications. And that's something that came from those cities, not from me.
I have more questions, but I'll
Can I get back to you? Yeah. Councillor White.
Out of those 387 applications, how many do you think could have been eliminated with the screening process?
So I think that I would like to encourage everyone to apply, but the moment that we extend the invitation to come to the City of Merritt, those should be pre-screened before we extend that invitation to the applicant to make sure that they have what is needed to start this business here.
And I believe the province pre-screens them as well, do they not? Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship.
This is more than just a presentation.
For the sake of time, given this is a delegation and not an agenda item, I really think that there is so much good discussion, and I do think that there's potential to look at how we can better move forward with this program. I also think it's probably an hour-long discussion, and I'd vastly prefer that we set up a committee of the whole meeting, and I know that we tentatively had discussions about that, but I think that we'd all be in a lot better position if we were to have that committee of the whole and then make some decisions out of that, where we can get into more of this level
Yeah.
of depth and detail.
I was hoping that that's where we would have had that kind of a discussion. I didn't realize that your presentation was going to be on this. So, Councillor Luck, do you have one pressing question?
I probably have a lot more, but I'm going
But one.
to, I have a lot more, but
Okay.
I think I'll wait for the committee of the whole. I think that's where we need to really discuss this and open it up, because there is a lot of issues with this program for sure. Thank you.
Councillor Bangu.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Through the Mayor. My question was in respect to pre-screening, and again, I'll wait. But it seems like you have a better grasp on this than we do. So thank you for presenting.
Thank you.
So we'll set up a committee of the whole, and we'll work towards that team approach. And Lori is already on her way up there.
Good evening, Your Worship.
Can you, yes, thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship, council members and city staff members. I'm Lori Robinson. I live in the Springbank neighborhood. I've written to you twice this summer, expressing my concerns about air quality in Merritt, the absence of monitoring, and the lack of a clean air committee in the Nicola Valley. For the past 3 months, the Nicola Valley has endured 2 hog fuel fires, an inundation of forest fire smoke from near and far, Ministry of Forests burning slash piles within kilometers of city boundaries, a resumption of schools with increased outdoor activity and open windows, local applications for emissions of wood fiber dust and burning wood waste, and an increase of COVID-19 numbers. During this time, no one could tell the most vulnerable of our residents just how safe or how dangerous our air quality has been, because no one is monitoring it. In fact, our air quality has only been monitored twice in the past 10 years by the Ministry of the Environment. Industries are expected to monitor and regulate their own emissions. Construction projects create bare land, heavy machinery, broken pavement, increasing dust. The City Committee for Clean Air has not met in years. My first letter to you and the local TNRD representatives sent in July raised these concerns and asked pertinent questions. No one responded, individually or as a group. Former City Councillor Richie Gage, a longtime director with the BC Lung Association, sent each of you a report this summer, highlighting the major issues and health risks in BC and positive initiatives taken by small communities. One was placed in each of your mailboxes this summer. In 2017, 5% of Canadian deaths due to pneumonia were directly connected to air pollution. During the 2003 SARS outbreak, areas with higher air pollution had twice the number of deaths. Air pollution affects sensitivity to COVID-19 by degrading our immune responses, making us more susceptible to bacterial and viral infections, and increasing the likelihood of an infection once exposure occurs. One early action taken throughout our province this March was to prohibit open burning throughout most populated areas of the province because of the pandemic. Our most vulnerable populations are those with pre-existing heart and lung disease, type 2 diabetes, and pregnant women. Air pollutants in Merritt come from transportation and industry, but also unpaved and unplanted ground surfaces, grasslands, unswept roads, slash pile burning, commercial cannabis production facilities and construction, our pollution is compounded by our winds and dry climate. We're talking about particulates, especially the smaller, more dangerous ones, nitrogen dioxides, sulfur dioxides, and ozone pollutants. Many communities, including Agassiz, Squamish, Williams Lake, Quesnel, Kamloops, Castlegar, Whistler, Terrace, Vernon, and Farmington, already are tracking their air quality 24/7 and have a baseline in place so they can prioritize, capitalize, and utilize their strengths in their individual communities, and we can learn from them. This report also highlights some of the progressive community innovations and provincial initiatives that are making a difference while supporting industry and employment. I strongly recommend the city take these 3 important steps. Work with the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy to place a permanent air quality monitoring station here in the Nicola Valley with real-time monitoring and online data to better inform all and to allow us to learn from the patterns and trends. We're more likely to be successful at getting this equipment permanently placed in the valley if our community commits to using the data for positive change. Second, promote community learning, involvement, and conversation by talking about air quality and pollutants, and help protect the people and the environment of the valley, especially the most vulnerable. When we know what our air contains, what seasonal influences are, and how we're affected, we can better respond. Again, your leadership in this is essential. Third, reactivate the Clean Air Committee by seeking guidance and support that is being offered to us by the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy to build a long-lasting group of concerned community members from a variety of industries and occupations, health and education groups, and community leaders from the entire valley. Air doesn't stop at city borders. This group would best serve our community by being focused on air quality alone. Early in my research, I considered recommending a group working under the general umbrella of environmental concerns. But water, illegal dumping, and waste recycling are big and important issues too. It's important to give each group a voice of their own and not have them compete at one table. It would benefit everyone to include students and teachers from the schools. This will impact future generations, but also provide tremendous future career, community advocacy, and learning paths. I came to the September Council meeting to learn about procedures and protocols. I left with a better understanding of the massive scope of your local responsibilities and interests. However, this is an action plan that needs to be started now, to plant the seeds so that it has the time and attention to grow. Recycling in the valley 20 years ago was almost non-existent, but the diligence of the city and the TNRD moved us forward in the protection of our lands. Air quality attention will require the same persistence. A seed, a spark, a first step in the right direction. We can and we must do better. I ask for your attention and action on this matter.
Any questions for Laurie before you sit down? Councillor Bangu.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Through the Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to apologize that no one has gotten back to you. That is not our policy here. We pride ourselves on responding to all citizens in a timely manner. This has not happened, and again, we apologize. And I'd like to ask the Mayor why this has not happened.
May I interject first, Your Worship?
Yes, please.
Your Worship apologized. There was some sort of a problem, even though it was emailed to each of you directly. And I got response from not only from the city, from Mr. Smith and Mr. Lois, and one of the councillors, not as a group, but just thanking me for my letter, and I really appreciated that. And the second letter, to be honest, Mr. Bangu, was far better.
So you did receive a response. That's
For
wonderful.
the second letter. The first one, after a month, I called and started, but it also got me going. I don't know if I would have pursued this, to be honest, sir. And that made me more knowledgeable and involved more people, and I was able to get better information instead of an emotional plea, and I liked that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. Any other question? Councillor Fair, are you? No, you're not. I thought I saw you. I didn't see it flashing there.
Thanks, Ms. Robinson, for your presentation. I do very much appreciate that you're picking this up as a concern, because I think, yeah, like you, not knowing the quality of our air is just puts us in an awkward position. So I do appreciate that you brought it forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I was going to speak on behalf of Mr. Smith. I'll let him speak for himself. Mr. Smith. Oops. Got somebody else in there.
do want to thank Lori, because she was actually the one that put us in contact with many of the right ministry officials that we have in fact reached out to now. Of course, during an election time, they're a little bit more hesitant about what they can commit to at this point, but we have plans set up to be able to discuss more permanent air quality monitoring. Once that time, I recognize that that's only a first step, and it was number 1 of 3, but the conversations have started, and largely because of Lori's prompting. So thank you for that.
And at the last meeting I attended, Mr. Lois was already on top of looking at what committees needed to be reactivated, what committees were defunct, and what were redundant. And that's also addressing one of my requests.
Yeah. We're trying. Councillor Christopherson.
Just want to say thank you to Lori. We've worked together for a long time, and she'd make a good committee member because she just sticks to something forever.
We've noticed.
So thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll ask Brett and Bernadette Nyeste to come up one more time, this time for good.
Thank you. This is my very first time. I'm a little bit nervous. My name is Bernadette Nyeste, and I live on Eastwood Avenue. I am here to speak to 11.2 on the agenda. My son Brett was unable to attend last minute because of a work emergency, and we had sort of planned to split this up, so bear with me, please. I've lived here all my life, and I raised my family here. My son Brett is raising his family here as well. We are some of the many residents who enjoy the green space behind our homes and often walk, hike, and play in the hills. Since participating in the city's online survey in the late summer, we have been increasingly concerned about the plans to develop the North Bench lands. We also participated in last week's online webinar for the North Bench Neighbourhood Development Plan. In mid-September, you each received a letter from my son Brett and my daughter-in-law Stacy. Several other residents of the community participated in 3 informal gatherings with us to discuss questions and concerns about the proposal and the processes. I want to talk to you about the processes, the survey, the webinar, and what comes next. We have concerns about the processes taken in communication about this plan so far. You are asking for input from city residents on the North Bench development when many people are not even aware of the issue. We spent time in the past 2 weeks visiting neighbors and sharing the contents of the letter with them. Every person we spoke to is opposed to the development. We feel it is crucial that residents have input, and we can't help but wonder how many residents are fully opposed to the proposal. We are concerned that the city assumes everyone has the same ability to access information and technology levels to be part of the process. Many people bought their homes in our neighborhood specifically because of the crown lands behind us. We wanted that peace and quiet, that recreation area, and the proximity to the wildlife and green space. The recreation area is well used and roundly enjoyed by residents from across the entire city for a wide variety of activities. In an article in the Herald, in the survey, and in the webinar, it was stated that housing options for Merritt residents are needed more than ever. That's why we're developing the North Bench Development Plan. We have spent time driving around looking at the tracts of land already within the city limits that are yet to be developed. We question between Armstrong and Ban Streets, above Springbank Avenue, the old Grasslands property, Merritt Plateau Holdings, 53 acres in Collettville, zoned R2 and R3, that have all been zoned and are waiting for building to start or continue. Our question is, why does the city need the added expense of adding more lands when some of these property blocks have been waiting for over a decade for building to start. Our second major point is the online survey the city undertook about the proposed development. Nowhere in the survey did the city ask the crucial question if acquiring Crown lands and building is even wanted. Yet, from what we understand, 57 people wrote in the comments that they were opposed to any housing being developed in the area. We found the survey results in the agenda for this meeting, but we wonder how many people will read through to the last 11 pages of an 88-page agenda. We assume most residents do not know how much important information is contained in council meeting agendas. How does the city plan to make the survey results available to the public? Another serious concern regarding the survey is the online format and the people who were unable to participate because of access issues, including technology. This limits the number of voices heard. And this was one of the things that came up repeatedly when talking to people, our neighbors, face-to-face. The October 6th webinar was an innovative way to present ideas and information safely during a pandemic. The difference between having a public meeting and a webinar that only allowed the moderator to view our questions was problematic. We would really like to have been able to read the opinions and questions from everyone. Several of our questions went unanswered. Is the webinar available on the city website for residents? And if not, how can we access it? During the webinar, we were told that the North Bench area was the preferred development because it would allow the building of a complete neighborhood, including businesses and commercial interests. We'd like to know why it is important in a small city like Merritt to have a third business district. It takes minutes to drive from one end of Merritt to the other. How does the city rationalize building another center outside of the downtown core and the north end of town? We'd like to know why businesses are needed in an established residential community with so many already nearby and accessible by public transit, vehicles, or walking. How do downtown businesses feel about developing commercial interests on the bench? It seems there are many people and factors to take into consideration. Surveys, urban planning companies, rezoning, public meetings, webinars, and other expenditures add up quickly. How far is the city going to go with the proposal if there is a significant opposition? Our letter asked about a city referendum, and the question still goes unanswered. Our informal group was reassured by the information we gathered from the Kamloops Disc Golf Club. The executive answered our questions and reassured us that undeveloped land in its natural state is the preferred type of course that works best with the course design they helped create for the Merritt proposal. We are strongly opposed to the city acquiring this Crown land behind the North Bench neighborhood and the proposed development of homes and businesses. The survey results and our conversations with neighbors show that leaving it as an unspoiled forest area is preferred by the majority. We are leaving you with our questions about a referendum, the costs, and better communication from the city. Thank you very much for your time.
Any questions for Mrs. Nyeste before we move on? Okay, Councillor Richard, are you trying to speak?
Trying anyway. I think at this point, a lot of us have a lot of the same questions, and we all did receive your letter, and with some of the information, I think what some of us have felt is that we also wanted to go to the open house, hear your information, and get some of that, because the letter that Brett and Stacy presented had a lot of information that not all of us are experts in and that we could answer. And that's where we would defer to staff to be able to answer those, because some of those questions will come through the action plan and the planning sessions and the information. So I know for myself, rather than pretend that I have the answer to that, and I didn't want to respond incorrectly. And I think that sometimes when we make a plan, we want to hear from you so that we can make an informed decision. So I feel bad for maybe not having put all of my information and thoughts into one long response, but prefer to always do that in person. So thank you for the presentation and info. I'm sorry I'm so muffled. Thanks.
Councillor Christopherson, did you have?
Thank you for your presentation, and I won't go through it now because it'll be coming up later in the discussion section. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the concerns that you brought up have been noticed, and I look forward to the time when we can get there and talk about it. So thank you.
And there were a lot of questions, and
Yes,
I don't think
realize.
any one of us could have answered the entire thing. And I think Mr. Smith wrote you back and
Yes.
mentioned something that there were a lot of questions, and even he had difficulty. It would have taken him.
Yeah, we understood
Oh,
that.
wow.
I think it was
You were just
a
bringing it to our
compilation
attention.
of a few people's ideas, and Brett and Stacy stood behind it to deliver it to council.
Yeah, and we appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, looking at unfinished business, there is a notice of motion. Councillor Bangu? Sorry, Mr. Councillor Luck, did you have a?
Yes, during our previous council meeting, I had motioned that the city consider adding a small stipend or fund to the city committees so that the volunteers can perhaps enjoy refreshments. I felt that it's important to...
Can we just have a seconder first, please?
Sure. Thank you.
Any seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Luck. You can continue now. Councillor Bangu.
Yes, I felt, when I was 16, I sat on a sports and recreation committee for the city of Merritt. And, as a volunteer, I was giving my time to the city, but I was receiving nothing in return, not even a refreshment that would have helped me through that hour or two. So from that experience and now talking to other volunteers that have sat on committees, they feel the same way, that their time is valuable and a refreshment might go a long way in keeping them there. So I truly feel that we need to start rewarding our volunteers because their time is valuable, and for that reason, I brought forward this motion. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Luck.
Having seconded the motion, I'd like to make a motion to refer this to the staff. We're currently looking at redoing our committee bylaws and everything. I'd like to leave this with them to look at and see what suggestions they might bring forward, if that's all right, Your Honor.
So a referral, do we need a second for a referral? You're moving that?
Yes, I'll move that.
And second? I'll second that. Councillor White? Okay. And any discussion on the referral? All in favor? Carried. Now we have 6.2, symbol of diversity and inclusion logo. And we have a motion on the table that council adopt option number 1 of the attached as a symbol of diversity and inclusion logo for the City of Merritt. And Councillor Fair, this was your original motion. Are you going to move this? Yes. Okay, and second? Okay, this way, 2 of them. Does anyone want to speak to this? Councillor Fair, your motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to say that I'm pleased with the results that staff has come up with, and it's nice to see that we got at least a portion of the community to weigh in on it. So, yeah, I'm just happy to see this moving forward.
Thank you. And Councillor Luck, are you?
Oh.
Okay. Anybody else speaking to this? Yeah, I'm glad we've got a symbol. And we will never have the entire community voting or coming on any issue. But as long as we get some members and a diverse group, that's what we're really looking for. So I'm going to ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We had several not voting here. I'm not quite sure. Okay. Okay, so that was unanimous. Bylaws, 7.1. This is our OCP amendment bylaw. And Mr. MacArthur, are you ready to speak to this?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. During the public hearing earlier this evening, there were a number of issues that were raised, and a couple of them are directly related to the issue at hand, the rezoning of the property. A number of issues are matters that would be addressed at a later stage, subdivision stage specifically. So I think instead of addressing each of those one at a time, I'll just leave it to council. If you have any questions about anything that was brought up during the public hearing earlier, feel free to ask, and I can speak to any of those issues, whether they be rezoning specific or otherwise.
Can I ask that you start with the water issue? It's been stated several times that we do not have enough water in our aquifer. Can we give the explanation again regarding whether it's going to be Mr. Smith or Mr. MacArthur? It makes no difference to me. Mr. Smith, you going to take this? Okay, we got everyone on here now.
Thank you, Your Worship. I fully recognize the burden that watering restrictions have placed on residents, largely because of environmental factors on the Coldwater River. One thing I really do want to make clear is that there is lots of water in our aquifers. We heard a number of people talk about how they heard 30 years ago that water is never going to be a concern. We understand that there is sufficient water in the aquifer. The problem is that there's a very strong connection between our aquifers and the Coldwater River. And so when we draw from beneath the Coldwater River from those aquifers, there's a connection there, and we pull the number that I understand from the province is roughly 100 liters per second directly from the Coldwater River by virtue of us pumping from those aquifers. And so we recognize that as a concern, which is why Council has directed staff to explore the potential for looking at alternatives at Kengard. But we're also looking at other alternatives as well. We understand that some form of study was conducted at the time the city previously made the decision to go ahead with Kengard well. So we're going to go back and take a look at all of the other viable alternatives, because we recognize that while there is lots of water in the ground, we need to do our part to support the Coldwater River, and Council has been very clear with staff on that. And so I think that we are well in the process of determining what other viable water sources there's going to be to service the City of Merritt for the long term, in addition to the significant amount that we have in our cold water aquifers.
Thank you. And I think we've just put in a request for funding for our Kengard well. I'll let you take that.
The request for funding hasn't yet gone in. Council has authorized us to create the plans that would ultimately be used to request funding should that opportunity arise, which we hope is going to happen very soon. But again, in provincial government land, things are more or less on pause. So we'll figure out what happens after the election.
I was jumping ahead, sorry. I don't know who went first, so I'm going to go with Councillor Fair. We'll go this way.
Thank you. The question was raised at the public hearing regarding where the idea of townhouses came from. So I'm just wondering if you could shed some light on that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Fair, through the chair. Yeah, so when the developer and I first met about this, which was early this year, they came with the idea that they wanted to build modular homes on the property. And I thought that was a great idea. It's a product that we don't have a lot of in the city, and certainly it could be a product that would be attractive to seniors that want to downsize, et cetera. But I did indicate that we're trying to make the Voght Street corridor more welcoming. And so I asked them to please design it so that buildings would face the street. So then I posed to them what type of buildings would they like on the street, because the current zoning allows for at the time it was commercial only. This was before the new zoning bylaw was adopted, right? So I asked them if they wanted to do that, and they said that they didn't have any desire to do commercial there. And then I did mention that staff were proposing in the new zoning bylaw, or the proposed zoning bylaw at the time, to have mixed use there, which would be retail with residential above. And of course that's since been adopted, and they could build 5-story buildings there with residential above retail. And again, the applicant said that there wasn't a desire for that, mainly due to financial cost, because it does cost a lot of money to build buildings like that, right? So they didn't want to do that. So I asked them what they would propose to front Voght Street. I put it to the applicant, and I was asked, would townhomes be acceptable? And I said yes, that would be something that would be acceptable because other cities do that, right? There's lots of examples here in BC and other parts of Canada where townhomes do front busy streets, right? Voght Street, of course, is not a highway. It used to be, which is why a lot of the development along Voght Street backs onto Voght Street, right? Because once upon a time it was a highway, but it's not anymore. So that's where the idea of townhomes came from. It was through that conversation about how are we going to have development fronting the street. And the thought was that modular homes fronting Voght Street wouldn't be the look that we would want for our gateway to the community. Although modular homes are a great product, the thought was that that wouldn't be appropriate on Voght Street. So that's where it came from. It was sort of a process of elimination and back and forth conversation about how do we get to there. And at the end of the day, that was the product or the type of housing that was most suitable to both the applicant and staff. So I hope that sort of gives a bit more clarity on where that came from.
Yeah, I think so. It does for me. And I think hearing a lot of the concerns kind of alludes to what you were saying there. And it really, a lot hinges on quality, on how this is all developed and how it's done and how well it's done. Thank you.
Councillor Christopherson.
Yep.
You're already on.
It was alluded to during the conversation about the connecting Grimmett Avenue through to Springbank, and it was stated basically that that'll never happen by one of the people up. And I'd like to know how, I know it's in the OCP, or at least the old OCP. Is that still a significant chance that the two roads will be connected, or is that just on paper?
Thank you, Councillor Christopherson. Through the chair, yes, that's still the city plan to proceed with that. It's been in the works for a long time, as you allude to. I think well before the current OCP was adopted in 2011. I've seen documents from well before then. We have had brief discussions with BC Hydro earlier this year, but those conversations were sort of put on hold, and COVID shutdown happened and all of that. So, but that certainly is on the radar. Whether it would happen or not, I can't say one way or the other whether it would be successful, but because we do depend on BC Hydro obviously dedicating that road dedication, and there are other factors as well, more technical factors to consider. So we do have money in a DCC's fund. In fact, the way DCC's development cost charge funding works is that projects are assigned in the bylaw, and one of those is the Springbank to Grimmett connector. So there is a dedicated pot of money that we've been collecting over the years as developments are approved that goes directly to that project. And in order to divert those funds away from that project, which was alluded to in the public hearing earlier, we would of course have to rewrite our bylaw to do that. So that project is very much still a current project, and that is the plan to continue it.
The reason I kind of want an answer to that one is because it leads into another one about the roundabout there, because my concern is that we've got a lot of school kids on that side of Voght Street already, and if Grimmett and Springbank go through, it'd be more logical to, I would think, to have a stoplight system so that there can be easy cross traffic. If it's a roundabout, that's, I'm not sure I can envision how that traffic flow would not be impeded by having large numbers of kids heading across the street to the school. So yeah, it's just something to keep in mind, I guess.
Well, and I want to jump in here with a question about the age 55 plus concept, because that hasn't been confirmed, and yet we've heard rumors that it might be, but it's, Mr. Smith has his hand up, as I think he might have an answer for that. 3, 4, oh gosh.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to just make one point, because I think there's an overarching kind of theme to a lot of the questions here, and a lot of members of the public very articulately explained that there are so many things about this particular development that are still unanswered. But I will say that in general, that unless you were doing a comprehensive development plan, which was proposed by one of the members of the public, these are things that you ordinarily don't know. I think that there was something of an illusion that it's normal or typical to have the developers provide the thorough range of studies at the front end before zoning. And I think that council needs to more or less address that kind of overarching question. Is right now, the processes that we have in place for zoning allow a developer to secure some form of interest in the land where they're going to be able to do what they want, and then that gives them the impetus or the desire to go out and conduct the necessary studies and invest the tens of thousands, and in this case very likely hundreds of thousands of dollars to sufficiently study that property. Whereas a lot of what is being asked is for a complete design with complete study. We want to understand what's happening with the traffic. We want to understand what's happening with the water management on that property. And these are really important things for the development of a neighborhood. And I do not want to minimize that. The question is it reasonable that they would be able to go through the zoning process first, to be able to ask, is this a reasonable use of the land generally? And that's what is being presented to the council with the official community plan, and the rezoning bylaw is that modular use as well as the R7 medium density use reasonable here? And if it's not, put the brakes on it. Like that this is the right time to do that. The public was absolutely correct when they're saying you don't get another chance to come back on zoning. That is the case. But when it comes to the development features themselves, in staff's opinion, it is reasonable to allow a developer to say, we will come up with the right way to approach this through the subdivision, through the development permit, and through the other processes that are in place. But I really have some hesitancy about the willingness to insist on upfront and complete planning at the rezoning and official community plan amendment stage. But I think that's kind of the overarching policy question that council needs to address. And there were a number of very, I think, poignant questions posed by the public as to specific zoning related concerns. Is it suitable that front portion would be zoned R7 for medium density residential? Council's absolutely right to ask those questions, but I would say that when it comes to the specific planning, the meat and potatoes of what this looks like, take it with a grain of salt, because by the time you start looking at fire access and all of these other things, stormwater retention, you start realizing, oh, maybe lots needs to come out here, maybe we need to redesign, maybe we need to look at something entirely different. And that is the developer's prerogative, that it could be completely different once that rezoning is done. So I just really strongly caution to look at the zoning as well as the change in OCP designation, because past that, everything else is subject to change and further study.
And as we talk about the zoning, we're looking at a combination R4, R7 at this point. I know, okay. Councillor Richard.
With all the comments and information that we have going around, I think we all have to really think carefully about the decision that we make, because the comments that we get are, once we change that zoning, it's pretty final, and any changes could happen that we would have very little control, and we all have the same concerns about water drainage and everything. So I think we just really need to be careful. You know, we're all wondering about safety, crosswalks, lighting, drainage, everything. So I love development and like to see new things, but we also have to make sure that we're making the right decisions and think carefully about everything as well. Thank you.
Councillor Luck.
Yeah, now that you've spoken to that, Mr. Smith, it leaves me a little bit of concern, because there is some concerns there. And if we go to R2, this could almost look like anything there in the end. So how do we control it? How does staff control it? How do we get to that where some of the residents have some of the concerns? 6-foot, 8-foot fence, drainage. Is Grimmett really, is that a good idea to have it go through? Not very many. It's pretty unusual to have main roads through modular home subdivisions and that kind of thing. So how do we control those things, or how, I hate that word control, how do we manipulate? No, that's even a worse word. How do we make sure that some of the concerns of the citizens are going to be addressed through this process? I mean, I have no problem changing this as R2. I really don't want to do that, tell you the truth, because we're down zoning. Our taxes are, we're not going to get the tax revenue.
We're not looking at R2.
Or sorry, R4, sorry.
And
R4
R7.
and R7, sorry. So if we don't, I mean, we're down zoning this property, so our tax revenue is going to be lessened with this down zoning as well. So that's got a concern for me as well. Should we be changing it and leave it the way it is and have them come back with a proper development for the current zoning? So I have a whole lot of questions about this too. And I'm one for development. I want to see development. I want to see our tax base grow. It was addressed tonight about hospitals. Well, our hospital is going to stay the same way it is if we don't get more residents here and we expand the population a little bit, so that we could got more impetus and more clout with the provincial government to get better services at the hospital. So there's all kinds of pros and cons to a development like this that we've got to really look at. So I do have some concerns about some of these things. So maybe Mr. MacArthur can address some of those concerns that not only I have, rest of council, and the public had tonight on this one.
And I've think I've heard Mr. MacArthur say that he would be addressing a lot of these in the subdivision and going further with this. He can't answer them now. He can answer them later.
I know, that's the challenge.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Did you want to add to that, Mr. MacArthur?
Yeah, and I can certainly address anything that council would want to now. It's just that, as Mr. Smith mentioned, things will change at the subdivision stage as we get to that point. So, for example, to take one issue, fire truck turnarounds. In the conceptual site plan that was provided by the applicant, and that word conceptual is really important because that's what it is. It's not the site plan, it's a conceptual site plan. It's a potential, of what could be put there. Clearly there wasn't turnarounds or hammerheads or those sorts of things where fire trucks would be able to do that. So will some of those lots change? Will the design be tweaked and revised, and et cetera? Yes, that's what happens at subdivision stage. You go through all of the issues with the applicant, and you look at all the different technical studies that might need to be done, and those are conditions of subdivision approval, right? So that's the really important process, the subdivision process, and that's a staff process, and that is why staff are here to deal with those types of issues. So I guess the best I can do is give you my assurance that staff will address those issues and make sure that the interests of the community, the best interests of the community are taken into consideration during that process. In terms of the rezoning itself, though, it's really important. Councillor Luck just alluded to the fact that the current zoning on the property allows for more than what's being proposed, right? So what's being asked of here is a down zoning or something lesser than what the applicant can currently do. So that's really important, and generally planners will not support down zonings. It's not something normally that we do, because if you have that level of development, then let's maximize it, right? Let's make the best use of the property. But in this particular case, the applicant made some very good cases of why what they're proposing is perhaps better suited for this particular property. But that's up to council to decide whether that's the case, right? That's really the question that's before you. So if anyone, though, has questions specifically to any of those other issues, I'm happy to address them here now. It's just that they're not part of the rezoning process. It's part of the subdivision or the development permit or the building stage process. But if you have questions and you want to know, I'm certainly willing to address any questions you have specifically.
Thank you. And Councillor Christopherson.
No, I asked mine.
Okay, and Councillor Bangu.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Why is R7 required as opposed to R4? Does the height of a building change from R4 to R7?
Thank you, Councillor Bangu, through the chair. Yes, so the height limit for the two zones is different. The height limit for R4, I believe, is 2.5 stories, whereas for R4 or R7 it is 4 stories. So that's an important consideration, and it was pointed out during the public hearing that the applicant is suggesting that the townhomes or what would be built in that space would be 2 stories or something like that, but it is important to note that zone allows 4. It's also important to note that the current zoning allows for 5 stories, right? So what's being proposed is less than what can be done on that property right now. Is it important that there are townhomes along Voght Street? Again, as I mentioned earlier, no. Staff would be okay with commercial there, with mixed-use residential there, with townhomes there. The applicant had a choice, and the applicant did not want to put commercial or mixed-use residential, and offered townhomes as an alternative. So so that's what has been proposed along there. So could it be just modular homes? Absolutely, that could be. But it would change the fabric of Voght Street because those modular homes wouldn't be arranged to be facing on Voght Street. They would be backing onto Voght Street, and there would be a fence or a wall along Voght Street, as there is on the other side of the street currently. So that would mean that you would have fences or walls on both sides of the street. So does it need to be R7 along there? No. It could be R4 there as well, but it would certainly change the streetscape of Voght.
So,
Thank you.
as you say that, it could be, but we're looking at a combination R4, R7, and park all at once. So it's not going to be either or, it's going to be R4, R7, right?
Correct, Your Worship. You would have to amend the current rezoning to do that, right? So what's being proposed is this combination of, but if you wanted to have the part that's proposed to be R7, if that were to be something else, there would need to be an amendment. And at this point, I think we can still do that, but we would need to have another public hearing.
Yeah, understood. Mr. Smith, I'm going through a couple to get to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. One thing that I would suggest, just to make this process as clear as possible, so the first one on the docket is the official community plan amendment, and largely what that is doing is changing this from a future development designation to a residential designation in the official community plan to allow some form of residential development there. So the first threshold question for council is, do you want to see this as a commercial development, which could also incorporate some residential components as a mixed-use development with the existing zoning, or would you like to see it developed as an entirely residential parcel? So that's your first kind of threshold question.
Can I interrupt for a sec? There's no commercial in it? Okay.
So it's currently future development, which under the official community plan would allow for commercial development, but it doesn't.
But not mixed use?
It would allow for mixed use.
Okay.
Because of its current zoning, but that's an interaction between the zoning and the official community plan. But right now, it's future development to a residential designation is that question under the official community plan. So I would treat that one as distinct in your minds, because the question is, do you want it to have some form of commercial on that property? If you do, then what you're doing today would change the nature of how that land could be used. The second question really is, you have a mix of zones, and as you said, the two that I think are going to be most relevant is the R4, the modular, and the R7 medium density residential. If council would prefer to see a single zone or other zones, you've heard the recommendation of staff, but genuinely, we do not want to get in the way. You are the policy makers on this particular development, and we understand and respect that role. And so our job really is to provide the wishes of developers, and you've heard the wishes of the public in and around the area. And so if you would like to consider some form of amendment to the existing plan, then that can absolutely be considered, but that's not what's on the table right now. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, those are the kind of the two questions I would say.
Okay. Councillor White.
For myself, I find this a real difficult zoning to change right now for the way that it is, because what I feel is what we've seen at the public meeting, and listening to the concerns of the speakers tonight, we have it in our head that what they presented to us is what will be going there, and I just find it very difficult to believe that they're coming forward asking for a zoning change like this, but there's no guarantee of what's going on, and everything can just change, just like that. So for me, I think I don't understand why we would need the two zonings on the one property. If their intent is to put forward what they've presented, then all that should be really needed is the C4.
No, R4.
R4. Right, R4. So I'm having a really difficult time with this, trying to make a decision on this zoning, and for those reasons that I don't think that there's enough. I mean, everybody keeps saying like, well, they can't, they don't have the money, or it's not feasible to have the plan in place beforehand, but I would think they must have some sort of an idea if they're out there proposing a situation like that they would have an idea of what they're going to have for streets and think about how they're going to get fire trucks in there and all those things. They may not have an exact dollar value on them, but I would think that would be a part of the plan somehow, some way. Yeah, so that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Councillor Fair.
Thank you. So I support this amendment to the zoning because I think this represents a happy medium that we're looking for in our community, which is it is a down zone, important to remember that. So we could see something much bigger commercial there, but that's not what's being proposed. So we're looking at something that offers more diversity in housing that I think Merritt has been looking for a long time. The idea of changing it all to R4 with fences and backyards facing that street, reducing the attractiveness and the welcomeness of it as a community is, I think, not the best choice. So I think this zoning change represents something that may not be the best for every individual in the community, but overall I think it represents the changes that we're trying to make in Merritt, growing and diverse.
Thank you. And Councillor Bangu.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm having a very difficult time with this development. There's just too many questions, too many concerns, and do we really want to limit the amount of commercial land available on Voght Street? It's becoming a rarity. For that reason, I will not be supporting any changes to the OCP or the bylaw. Thank you.
Well, I, for one, would not want to see all R4. I would prefer a mixed use. And part of that rationale, from my point of view, is the width of the lots. The R7, yes, it may go up a little bit, but it gives you a little bit bigger lot size. So I don't want to see it only at an R4. And we've got concerns over here from staff. I'm going to...
Only that at this point, I think it's appropriate that council put a motion on the table, and that obviously when there's questions being asked, we're happy to answer, but we're getting closer to debate.
Okay, you need a motion.
So a motion, and have discussed with the developer as well. Council would first need to consider that official community plan question, which is the change in designation. And so there may be different feelings about that particular question than the specific split zoning question. So split those in your mind as you approach the official community plan, and I think that would be the right approach.
Okay. So we're looking at official community plan first, and we're looking at the question of whether we move from future development to residential development. So I need a mover that council give third reading to the official community plan amendment bylaw number 2289-2020. Can we have a mover and seconder first? And was that a second as well? Move second? Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to get your attention, but that's okay. I was going to ask, there seems to be a lot of confusion about this OCP change and the zoning and multiple zonings.
We're not looking at zoning now. We're only looking at OCP change from future development to residential.
This question was before this motion was put on the table, in the sense that because there's so much confusion about should we do the OCP, should we not, what if I move the motion, the second option to defer this? Are we allowed as councilors to get more information from staff and try to get some more time to deal with this? I know I'm peddling on soft ground here, but there seems to be some concern about this.
Mr. Lois.
Just asking a question.
Through your worship to Councillor Luck, a member can always move that an item be deferred to a particular day, in which case that would not be subject to debate. You'd have to move to the vote immediately. And just again, I'd like to remind all councillors that in terms of purely on a procedural motion, you can only even get to discussing whether or not you want to vote on the zoning bylaw if you pass the OCP one. The zoning bylaw cannot be adopted without the OCP amendment.
Okay, so we should deal with the
Are you-
OCP first.
So we have to deal with the OCP.
Ask about the deferment on the other piece then? Is that what you're suggesting?
If you want to move a deferment of the OCP item, then you can, but that would automatically say that you cannot consider the zoning item at all.
Yeah, of course.
Or you
Yeah,
can have a
I
vote
understand
on
that.
the OCP, in which case...
Because it'll put everything on the back burner for now.
It
I
will,
understand
yes.
that, yeah.
Kind of heard the two conversations. I got lost in the two conversations at once. Mr. Smith.
The one other thing that I would add is when you defer a motion after the public hearing has been heard, council is not allowed to receive any new information on that particular.
So we can't ask.
So, yeah,
It's complicated.
it is complicated. And so I think that it would depend on what the intent of council was.
Yeah.
Really, I think that there is probably a vote to be had on the official community plan amendment, I think. And then I think there may be a larger debate, it sounds like, on the zoning side. And if there is kind of any desire to consider potential amendments, I think that could be done at that stage. But really, at this point, we aren't trying to guide the process. This really is yours. But defer whatever you would like, just knowing that there may be things that can be addressed tonight.
And we cannot defer and seek out further information.
Even from staff, getting clarification from staff on some things, because
We need to do it now.
council table on some of these things.
Mr. Lois.
The short answer is it's complicated. The longer answer is it depends on the information you get. The courts have generally found that you can get a very limited amount of information from staff responding to specific points without requiring a further public hearing. But if any advocacy takes place, then you would need an additional hearing.
Fair enough. Okay, then I'll withdraw my question and everything at this point. I just wanted clarification on that, because I can hear confusion.
So we have a mover and a seconder on third reading to the official community plan amendment bylaw number 2289, 2020. I'm going to call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Now, okay, I'm looking at the recommendations here. I should have had an and that. Council adopt official community plan amendment bylaw number 2289.
Those need to be separate propositions.
Okay. Let me go back to the original. Okay. So that was third reading, and we do want to adopt the official community plan amendment bylaw 2289, 2020. So I need a mover and a seconder to adopt it. Need a seconder? Okay, and this is to adopt it. The official community plan amendment. Any more questions on this? Councillor Bangu, can I have you turn towards me, please? Thank you. I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I still ask you to turn towards me so that we can face each other. Like to see your face. Thank you. So now we're looking at the zoning amendment bylaw. This may take a few more questions, but we can still get the motion on the table. I need a mover and a second for the third reading to the zoning amendment bylaw 2290-2020. And any debate on this? It's open. It too is complicated. We've heard a lot. Are we ready to make the move? There's a lot of stuff that is unanswered. I get that. And a lot of it will be addressed with subdivision, etc. Mr. Smith.
I think many of you are probably wondering how you would do what you are thinking about doing, and so I'll cut right to the how. I think that probably the simplest way to have further discussion on this, if some of you are thinking about having single zoning on the property instead of R7 to facilitate further discussion, that would necessitate a further public hearing. There would be a further opportunity to come back, revisit this. So it would be a resolution that council amend bylaw number 2290 to, I think, remove the R7 zoning and include the entirety of the parcel being R4, something to that effect. That is something that the developer has expressed interest in, and so once again, you've heard some of the concerns from staff on that front, but this is your process. We're out of the way on it, and so that's how you would go about it and facilitate further change and discussion on that particular portion of the application.
Councillor Luck.
So my concern is still about doing the rezoning at all. And did we get any feeling from the public about leaving the zoning alone? Because I heard that from some of the public at that meeting about just leave it alone. But I don't think they understood the implication of leave it alone, because I tried to explain that to somebody, and he wasn't very happy with my explanation, but it was the truth. It's the truth that if we leave it alone, there could be 3 5-story towers there, if I understand. Is that correct?
Not now. We've just changed the OCP.
It's out of compliance.
Yeah, it'd be out of compliance, but that's what it could have happened, right?
And if I may, the change to the OCP wouldn't affect that, though, because you could still have mixed-use residential.
Mixed-use residential, yeah.
It just added that as an option, so.
Sorry. So I was just wondering if we had much input from the public on that piece, leaving it alone. Just asking the question.
Asking a question or?
Asking the question if we got much input from the public about leaving it alone, leaving the zoning where it is and allow the developer to come back with a completely different plan.
I didn't hear that from the public. I heard them
Yeah, I
say
did.
they had real concerns that they wanted the developer to address. And I didn't hear people say, no, they're absolutely opposed to it. Not in general.
Well, I think the people that were asking me to leave it alone is they didn't understand what leaving it alone meant. So when I was at the public meeting, that's what so I tried to explain it. They weren't sure, yeah.
Can I have you turn your?
Yep.
Councillor Christopherson.
Yeah, I think there is an awful lot of confusion concerning it, but my dad always told me, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. And if we leave it as commercial, there could be a lot of unhappy people with the height that is presently allowed there. At least, and in my own heart, I feel that residential is a more appropriate use because it's in a residential neighborhood, instead of continuing on with the commercial venture. which was also the similar question with the Walter Street proposal, that people often didn't understand that if they had left it alone, it could have been even higher. So downsizing, I think, in this instance is more appropriate, and I think people will understand it so long as we take into account all the concerns that were brought up of how it will look and how it will impact the traffic and all of those things. And I'm sure that our staff has heard those concerns very well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Richard.
This certainly hasn't been an easy decision for anybody. Taking into the account everyone's concern, information, worries. I'm still worried about what decision I'll make. But the problem is in the last 2 years, we also heard a presentation from a group that wanted to put a cannabis plant there. Now, we'd have a lot more angry people if we had approved that. And at least by having this residential, if it's 1 or 2 stories, people aren't going to love it. But I have faith that the developer will put some very nice homes there, and will put the landscaping in there that would be attractive for a neighborhood. And I have faith that through the proper development, it can be quite the nice residential development, and with the proper drainage and fencing that will please everyone. Well, maybe not everyone, but quite a few. But it was less than 2 years ago that we heard that presentation that they wanted to put that cannabis facility there because it was right beside hydro. So let's not forget that. I think people would have been more upset over that. So I don't think we're going to make everybody happy, but we'll try our best anyway. So thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Luck.
Yeah, I'd like to move the motion that Mr. Smith crafted for us, because I'd like to get that on the table so that we can have a discussion around that.
We've already got a motion on the table.
Oh, so I'll move an amendment, amend the motion, sorry, that Mr. Smith had crafted, right? It was an amendment to the motion, so I can bring that forward.
I didn't realize he crafted a motion.
Was I correct? Did I miss that? Mr. Smith, you crafted an amended motion for us?
No, I think he suggested that if you were looking at one zoning, that you make the amendment.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. What I want to do is just get that on the table. I'm not saying I'm in favor or against it, but I think it needs to be on the table so we can at least discuss it. If I'm wrong, let me know that.
So are you looking to...
Because we're all sitting here kind of twiddling our thumbs on this one and not sure where we're going. So I want to at least have an opportunity to discuss that piece, Mayor. That's all I'm trying to do. Give us an opportunity to discuss that and see if that's valid. Sorry, Mr. McCarthy.
So, Mr. Lois, we're waiting for...
Sorry, just looking at a very long paragraph of very legal language.
We don't want the legal one, but no, we do. We do.
I just don't want to leave the meeting and feel that we left something on the table, Mayor.
Yeah, I heard you.
Yeah, that's all I want to do here, yeah.
Can I have you mute your mic? Thank you. Move to the side. Move your... No. Move your computer to the side of your button. Yeah. And because I didn't see that in the amendment, so I'm, okay. Are you ready, Mr. Lois? We'll give you another, 10 seconds. Okay.
Okay, so Your Worship, Council, the current bylaw proposal is about altering it provides the legal land descriptions and then proposes zoning changes from corridor commercial C4 to medium density residential R7, residential modular home R4, and park and cemetery P1, and appear as attached in Schedule A, which forms part of this bylaw. We don't have some crayons with us, which means we can't easily change the map as it's attached. So we're thinking the easiest way to do it is if we just pull the medium density residential clause out of there. So it would read from corridor commercial to residential modular home R4 and park and cemetery, and would appear as attached in Schedule A with the R7 altered to R4, which forms part of this bylaw.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Okay.
No problem.
Well, now the discussion. I stated earlier, I don't want just R4. I want the combination of, because of the lot size. That's my own personal preference. Otherwise, we'll have the entire lot up there in tiny little 30-foot wide lots. Councillor Etchart. Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Fair.
Yeah, so I'll just sort of try and reiterate what I said earlier, that I think having the mixed zoning of R4 and R7 allows for more diversity, and that it will give the opportunity to create a better aesthetic for that area of town. So I'm still in favor of that.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Etchart.
I think we must be thinking very similarly, because here we just adopted a motion to have our a diverse Merritt symbol, and I think that now that we're doing an OCP change, we want to have our diverse neighborhood too. And with a lot of the designs that you see people putting up, I think that having some townhomes mixed in with this modular home development could look quite attractive. And if we want change and diversity, I think it could look good. People are never going to be happy with everything, but we'll try our best to make good decisions, and tough decisions are what we do, and so we'll have to make them and possibly suffer the consequences or enjoy the praise. We'll have to see what happens.
Okay, any other going to speak to this? Councillor Christopherson.
Just to reinforce what Councillor Etchart said, that I think having the option to have some variety there will be significant. I think it will make a nice impact. Thank you.
And I couldn't have said all of that better. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All in favor? Well, hold on. Yeah, I wanted to read it because I'm seeing hands going up when we don't know what we're voting on. We've taken out the R7, so we're voting as an amendment. Do we? Yes, okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. You're currently voting on the amendment to amend the bylaw before you to remove the reference to R7. So now it would read that the official zoning map, being Schedule A of the zoning bylaw, etc., is amended by changing the zoning designation of the parcels legally described, etc., from corridor commercial C4 to residential modular home R4 and park and cemetery P1, and would appear as attached in Schedule A, altering R7 to R4. So you would want to vote in favor of this if you want to remove the R7, and you want to vote against the amendment if you want to keep the R7.
Yes, your votes weren't matching with what we were talking about here, so, okay. So, all in favor? And opposed? Carried. So back to the original motion.
Defeated, Your Worship.
Defeated.
That was 2-5.
That was defeated. Now back to the original motion. Sorry. It is late. So now we're on the original motion, and are we needing time to debate? I think what we can do is assure ourselves, staff is assuring us, the contractors are, or the developers are assuring us that they're trying to take into consideration all of the issues or the issues that come up. They can't deal with every single one of them, but our planning staff have heard, and they're going to hold them to the fire, I think. And this is all we can hope for at this point. Yes, it could get changed, but right now, this is what we're looking at. And in future, we're still have the potential of an R4, R7 development there. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And that was definitely a carried. Okay. Well, that was long and drawn out. But that was only third reading. Now we're going to adopt the zoning amendment bylaw 2290. I'm not going to ask for any more. Okay, move seconder. Seconder, thank you. And I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. That was a tough one. On to permissive tax exemptions. And Mr. Lois? Can we have the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So on September 15th, Mr. Strang proposed the city's permissive tax exemptions for the next until 2024. And you gave 3 readings to the bylaw that was proposed at the time. We do need to apologize as staff. That bylaw was a little underdeveloped, and so we're proposing essentially everything that you considered giving permissive exemptions to was perfectly proper to go forwards. That was properly advertised. However, the wording of the bylaw was jumping through the wrong hoops for some of them, even though you could jump through all the hoops. So that we've just put in a proposal to rescind that wording and then to go through to amend it to be worded properly and then to give it third reading and adoption, which you can do at a single meeting under Ministerial Order 192.
And so what we have here now is just a category or categorization of the different properties that we looked at before? Is that?
Yes, Your Worship. The basically the bylaw, as you saw it last time, simply referred to the Community Charter Section 224A, which is part of the permissive tax process, but is only a part of it, not the whole thing.
Okay.
So now all the correct section numbers are in there.
Okay. So I need a mover and a seconder. No, move. Let's get it on the table first.
I don't know if I can be here. I think I excused myself last time.
Oh, that kind of question. Yes, you did. Only for,
Yeah.
yes, you did. Yeah. Sorry.
Didn't we not let you? Well, not able to say that. I thought you stayed for the.
I thought you stayed for permissives.
Yeah, it's not a.
I think what they deemed was that it's not a close enough,
Nope. There's nothing about.
Close
that's
enough.
the first.
okay, I'm going to try this again. I'm not going to listen to any counselor. I need a mover and a seconder. That council rescind third reading of permissive tax exemption bylaw number 2288. That's what you moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. And I need a mover that council amend permissive tax exemption bylaw number 2288, 2020 as attached. Okay, and anybody can jump in with a question at any time. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mover and seconder that council read permissive tax exemption bylaw number 2288, 2020 a third time. Okay. And council questions? None. All in favor? Opposed? None. And a mover and seconder that council adopt permissive tax exemption bylaw 2288, 2020. And again, the question, council, hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. On to land use fees amendment. Mr. MacArthur. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So staff have taken it upon ourselves here to look at the fees that we're charging for various development applications, and are proposing that council amends the bylaw to bring us in line with other communities in the southern interior. One of the benefits with this as well is that we're currently leaving a lot of money on the table with development applications, and there is another report on the agenda later this evening around a staff position, and this change would go a long ways to covering the costs of that particular position. So the other thing we want to do is bring some of our other bylaws into conformance. So the zoning bylaw, when it was adopted on September 1st, spoke to discretionary use, and we currently have no fee structure or application process for that, so we want to make sure that that's brought into conformance with the zoning bylaw. And then also we have separate bylaws where we have fees located. For example, we have a bylaw just for subdivision fees. Some of our fees are in the fees and charges bylaw, and then the others are located in this bylaw. So by consolidating those into this one location, it makes it a lot easier for developers and residents to find the fees for the applications that they're putting forth. So staff did a lot of research with other communities, and you can see that in the report that we compared to other interior communities, including Kamloops and a number of Okanagan communities of various sizes. And you'll note that most of the fees that we charge, because this bylaw was last updated in 2009, that a lot of these fees are quite out of date. So the proposed fees would, like I say, bring us in line with those other communities. What staff are proposing generally is to have fees that are sort of a mid-range with those other communities. So Kelowna is generally the most expensive community for development applications, and so we're not proposing fees of that amount, but we are looking to be more on line with some of the other smaller communities in the interior. So with that, if any of members of council have questions about this, staff would be happy to answer.
Okay. I have a question on the term discretionary use. Could that just not be added to the list of what is used if it was deemed important enough?
So discretionary use is outlined in the new zoning bylaw. What that entails is that in particular zones, if a use is identified as a discretionary use, it allows staff some flexibility to determine whether that particular use is appropriate for that particular parcel. So to give an example, building supply center in the city center, we might not want that on Quilshena Avenue, but where the Home Hardware is located at the southern part of downtown, it makes more sense. So that would be an example of a discretionary use where it may make sense in the zone, but may not make sense on all the properties within the zone. So
Okay.
Discretionary use gives staff that flexibility.
Okay, that makes better sense than what I was thinking. So, thank you. And Councillor Fair.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, when I was reading through this, noticed that there's a lot of variation from one community to the next, not necessarily in line with their population. So I can appreciate how hard it is to find sort of the right amounts, but I think going for a median is the right approach. So that's just what makes sense to me anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, I concur. Councillor Luck.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, no, for the most part, it looks really good, and one of the things we want to be careful of is not becoming tax uncompetitive, right, or uncompetitive. And so I really like what I see here. The only one I had a concern about, Mr. MacArthur, is the subdivision, the lots of the subdivision. When you're looking at Kamloops, it would be our closest competition, right, for getting some development in the community and comparing, is that I see that like 11, when you go into lots, 250 to 750 plus 100 per lot, but we're 2,500 plus. Was that a mistake there? Or why do they only charge 250 to 750 and we'd be looking at 2,500?
Thank you.
Clarity on that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Luck, through the chair. Kamloops, like us, has not updated their fees in quite a long time, so they're a bit out of date on subdivision as well. They have a three-pronged approach. They charge $250 for, I believe it's building subdivision, building strata. They have a different fee for bare land strata and a different fee for fee simple. Mm-hmm. That's their base fee, and then they charge $100 per lot on top of it. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the other communities, their base fee is generally a lot higher.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
noticing that.
Yeah, so it is because Kamloops as well has not updated their fees for subdivision in quite some time.
Great explanation. Thank you.
And you're actually proposing that this now sits in our fees and isn't going to be an independent. So we'll look at it and review it along with the other fees all the time.
Correct.
Mr. Smith. Oh, what have I got here?
One thing that I'm not speaking to that particular point, but that I would like to just note as well, I know that one of the main concerns of council is competitiveness, making sure that we fall in line with medians, but I think there's a few areas that it's important to understand where we're actually proposing a decrease in pricing. You'll notice, and particularly in the development permits for riparian, geotech, wildfire, a lot of it is that we understand that when people come forward with a development permit, the last thing we want in order to have people go through these really important steps of getting geotech reports, getting the riparian area assessments, is the fee. And so we're sometimes worried that those processes have maybe historically been skirted or sidelined, and we're trying to say, all right, yes, there is going to be an upfront cost to start a development process, but those more, I would guess, the add-on items that are critically important, the fees have actually been reduced. And so for many developments, you're not necessarily going to see a giant increase in the overall fees. We're just incentivizing people to go through the proper processes and proper channels instead of having kind of back channel, side door deals with covenants and other things. So,
thank you. Seeing no more questions from council, I'm going to ask the question. Oh, hold it. We need a motion on the table, right? That council give first, second, and third readings to land use fee amendment bylaw number 2292/2020. Do you want them all individually? Okay. Can we give first reading to land use fees amendment bylaw 2292/2020? Thank you. And no other questions? All in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. And that council gives second reading to land use fees amendment bylaw number 2292/2020. Okay, and seeing nobody jumping in the queue, all in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. And that council give third reading to land use fees amendment bylaw number 2292/2020. Seconder? And all in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. Okay, so now we're on to new business. Now we're starting our agenda, new business. Yeah. Okay. Can we have the staff report, Mr. Lois? Oh.
Thank you, Your Worship. You may recall on the 29th, staff brought to you a Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant application, and this is the next phase in that whole shebang, which we mentioned to you at the time would be coming forward. And this time we're delighted to say there's a whole 9 days before the deadline instead of less than 48 hours. So this is we're requesting direction from council to submit an application for the Voght Street Phase 2 project. This is looking for the city to commit about $750,000 in order to try to leverage that into getting $7.5 million from the federal and provincial. At the maximum, that's a 90% funded scheme. They may or may not agree to all of that, so we're proposing it in 2 different phases. We are very excited about the prospect of getting to develop some more of Vogue Street. And so, that's the application, which is the request from staff, which is before you at this point, to direct us to submit that application.
Thank you. And can I have a motion that council directs staff to submit an application for Vote Street Phase 2 project through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Rural and Northern Community Stream, and that council support the project and commit to the city's share of project costs $747,586. And anybody want to speak to this? Councillor Etchart.
Well, I think it's important that we discuss this because so many people in the public realize that we've done some paving on Vote Street, not realizing that that is the end of the project for now and that it's in separate phases because so many people think, well, the city's not done before winter. And so, of course, it's important for people to realize that it's all in phases and we have to apply for funding. And so it's critical and it's important that we move this along. Thanks.
Okay, I couldn't agree more with that statement. And I like the idea that other people are paying for it, not city taxes, taxpayer dollars, yeah. Well, it may not come out of city taxpayer dollars anyways. Well, I guess ultimately it is. Water surplus, sewer surplus, $500,000. We've already got it accumulated for that very purpose. The other $200,000 is coming from a general surplus. So technically, we're going to do it anyways, water and sewer. Now we add the $200,000 from general surplus and get it all done, assuming we get the grant. Okay. Minor little detail. Minor little detail. Okay, and all in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. Thank you. I was just, as an aside, talking to the mayor from Sicamous, who happened to have been on the sit-up board that I sit on. And what he said was over the last 6 years, they've raked in $40 million worth of grant funding. And I thought to myself, we're going to catch up to them. Sicamous. 40 million in 6 years. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we want to talk about them. What we don't want is staff working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day to try to get them done by the deadline dates. That's what we don't want.
You secretly want that. You just don't want us to pass out.
Okay, you have a point there. Yeah. I want you to still remain healthy at the end of all of those stints, okay? Okay, on to the next. Yeah, no kidding. Okay, we're looking at bulk water sanitary dump locations. Mr. Smith, can you give us the staff report on that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this actually dates back a couple of months now when staff learned that for the Trans Mountain camp that was being created, the servicing for that was initially proposed to be out of Kamloops, meaning their sanitary sewage disposal as well as their bulk water was all going to come from Kamloops, which introduced significant cost to Trans Mountain, and it represented a potential revenue loss opportunity for the city of Merritt. And so staff had very preliminary discussions to explore whether we would have the theoretical capacity to be able to provide servicing for that particular development. And then it became evident in those conversations that if that servicing was going to be provided, we were literally talking about having them pull up to one of our manholes, installing a flow meter, like calling up one of the public works boys, installing the flow meter, dumping it, and then doing that 3 times a day. With water, it was looking at a potential backflow prevention system with a flow meter. It was very labor intensive. And so the question was, are they willing to build us the infrastructure so that we can then sell them the services, was really the theoretical question. And as it was tentatively explored, they are willing to do that. Kind of along the Trans Mountain route, many of the communities are being provided with infrastructure. I know Mayor Brown is well aware of Clearwater that was very successful in receiving funding from Trans Mountain for their wastewater treatment plant. And so what I would like to say is they're looking at about 75 cubic meters per day over the course of roughly 2 years for both the sewage disposal and the bulk water. On the sewage disposal side, that would represent about a 2.5% increase to the city's overall effluent processing. We do roughly 3,000 cubic meters per day right now, just under. The only real question mark on that is that during freshet, we can experience groundwater infiltration that causes higher volumes to be processed, and so there may need to be additional work with Trans Mountain to see is there a place where you can bring it outside of that time if we are experiencing that high groundwater infiltration, but that's a future discussion. As well, on the water side, we distribute about 6,027 cubic meters per day, so the additional 75 would represent about a 1.24% increase. Again, I really do want to reiterate that I think the public is right and council is right to be concerned about the overall water consumption. What I would say here is that if we are going through extreme drought, we would ask the Trans Mountain to go to another location. That's something that has already been tentatively discussed in those discussions, so that during the drought scenarios, this wouldn't be a burden on the existing water system. But most of the year we would be able to safely provide it, and if we aren't in a drought year, we would be able to provide that water as well, while we're trying to figure out alternatives. So this is the proposal. Now, in relation to the location of the infrastructure, there was some back and forth with Trans Mountain in finding a site that would be potentially suitable, because it needed to be something that could be developed relatively quickly, because their camp would be operational in the spring of 2021. We needed to identify potential sites, and city-owned sites are relatively limited at this point. But the biggest reason is while the facility doesn't emit odor during general times, while that effluent is being kind of dumped into the system, there is a smell associated with it. We're not going to sugarcoat that. And so putting it in you couldn't sugarcoat that smell. While we are in the process of looking at where it could be located, anything that was near residential or existing commercial uses was really ruled out fairly quickly in the process, which brought us to the airport lands, and then the process was much on what is existing, where could we put it, where services are going to be already in place, where is there going to be kind of ground that would be sufficient for this, where are the elevations suitable, and most importantly, can we do this while not limiting any potential future commercial uses at the airport? That was a major consideration as well. And so we've identified 2 different sites for this potential infrastructure in the report, and we're seeking council's authority to include these in the financial plan, subject to a final agreement with Trans Mountain to cover the costs associated with these projects.
So what you're saying is we do not pay anything to set this up, but we're going to gain some finances over the next 2 years, and possibly longer with other.
That was a good summary, yes. I should say that you're exactly right, this is infrastructure that's not only for the life of Trans Mountain, it would be in place long after that as well, and so these would be services that have been requested by many contractors. We understand that there is a significant amount of effluent that goes out to Kamloops right now to be processed, and if we have in-house capacity, that could be a revenue generator for us where the incremental costs are really quite low, because the cost with wastewater treatment is the plant itself. If you've got the plant, then a little extra processing is very sensible. So I think that financially, this is something that makes a lot of sense where they're offering to construct the infrastructure for us.
Thank you. Councillor Fair.
Yeah, I think this is a win for Merritt, whether the funds come from the federal coffers or not. This is infrastructure that we can use in the long term. And I think that, in Merritt, anytime that something comes up that might put pressure on our water systems, red flags go up, but you've addressed them here. And at the same time, we also have plans to address them in the long term. So the fact that we have cold water, that it's prone to drought, we can still manage our water systems in a responsible way. So.
Thank you. And Councillor White.
Would there be enough revenue to go towards the Vanguard project?
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor White. I think that the potential revenue generated, absolutely it could go to anything that Council desires. I think the key here would be that we haven't determined in any way how that would be allocated at this point. But there would be a good amount of revenue looking at it, because it's, I think $47.50 was the per cubic meter amount of that's what we would receive per cubic meter. If you're talking about 75 a day for just short of 2 years, it's very significant.
Well, I was just thinking that could be something that could satisfy some of the concerns of that the public had with the water issue if we...
Yeah, I think as always, the idea is that these funds, wherever possible, you want to use them in a leveraged capacity for grants. And so if we could use that as the upfront cost, you just saw a $747,000 project. If that can be leveraged into something more, that would be fantastic. And so that's really a question for another day, though, in terms of how the funds would be allocated, but it totally could be.
Thank you.
Any other question? Oh, Councillor Christopherson.
Yes, Councillor White stole my thunder. No, I really like the idea that if we're going to bring in revenues, that we consider earmarking it for a problem that we have. And that way it could be a win-win, because we definitely need to do upgrades to our water system to bring in the Vanguard well. So it could be a blessing in disguise. Thank you.
And we've got our Chief Financial Officer here. He's taking it all in for when he puts up his reserve policies in place. Yeah.
That's right. You can earmark it wherever you like.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ask the question. Oh, I don't think we have a motion on the table yet, do we? That Council directs staff to amend the 2020 to 2024 financial plan bylaw to include the bulk water and sanitary dump infrastructure projects, conditional upon entering into a final agreement with Trans Mountain to cover all costs associated with these projects. And one of you will do a second. Yep. And now I'm asking the question. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Retail cannabis sales. That Council, let's get into a staff report first before I get too carried away. Okay, Mr. MacArthur.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on this particular issue, staff did bring reports last year to Council to ask whether to lift the cap that is set in the zoning bylaw, which is that there be a maximum of 4 retail cannabis sales stores located in the community. And subsequently, Council defeated that motion and decided to keep the cap. However, since then, some circumstances have changed. We've had a store open. There's another store working on opening currently, and a A third store is still going through the provincial review process. And a fourth store, the application was terminated. We received notice recently from the province. So there is now an opening potentially for one of those stores, but we're in a bit of a quandary in that four stores have been approved. So do we create a process to decide who would get to apply now? Because we do have a number of businesses that have indicated they would like to. Or does council just remove the cap and allow people to apply if they so choose, like any other business in the community? So that's the question before council tonight for this report on whether to remove the cap, or if not, then staff would have to, or council would need to direct staff to create a process on how to allocate that other spot. So.
Okay, I'm going to, I don't know who's up first. Councillor Bangu.
Thank you, Mayor. I strongly feel we should leave the cap as is and figure out another method to fill that fourth spot. Let's just leave it as is and figure out another way. Thank you.
Councillor Fair.
I'm very much in favor of removing the cap. I disagree with the cap on legal business forms at all. And if I were to choose a cap on any business, it would be businesses that sell cigarettes before cannabis. So I'm happy to see this cap removed if we do vote on in that way.
Thanks. Councillor White. Oh, hold on. I think I've got Councillor Luck. I'll come back to you.
So I just have one question. As I'm a free enterpriser, and I think we should have unlimited, you know, if a person wants to open a gas station, we should be allowed to do that. He shouldn't have to decide if we got 4 stations in town or anything like that. However, this is marijuana. This was a controlled substance some time ago. And so I think my only question would be is, does any business, any marijuana, under the rules and their licensing application, do they have to come to council to get approval before they open? Good. Then I would be in favor of getting rid of the cap then, because we can still control who comes in. Because you know my feeling about, okay. If they have to, everyone has to come to council, I'm okay with this.
Can you push your button? Thank you. Councillor White.
My position is that we control how many liquor stores can be opened, and as far as I'm concerned, marijuana is in the same category, and I'm against removing the cap. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I was against putting the cap in previously. I still am. Councillor Bangu. Oh, hold on. I'm going to speak first. You already had a chance to speak.
I thought you did.
And yeah, and I already, I don't see why we have to cap marijuana. We haven't capped any other industry in town. We've only capped this one. And it makes absolutely no sense to me, and I'm not in favor of maintaining that cap. Councillor Etchart first.
I think when this came to us originally, we had the 4 applications in, and the 5th one was, there was a concern that if the government store was making the 5th application, that they may be approved before all the private store operators. Maybe that's not the case, but that's what I seem to remember. But with all the amount of locations that have to be vetted, pay application fees and all this, I think 4 is enough, but I'm not so sure that I'm in favor of removing the cap, because we already have the one that's open, some that are in the process of, and how many stores can Merritt support? But on the other hand, if they want to open up and rent a space and put the investment into the community, I mean, that can be a good thing too. But I think 4 stores for Merritt would be lots, but Maybe I'm wrong. Thanks.
Councillor Christopherson.
Originally, I was in favor of a cap. I thought it messed it up. But so long as all the other constraints, the distance, am I not on?
No, you're not on. Thank you. I'm
Oh, do I have to
not
start
sure.
again?
There's so many.
I'll skip to the short version. Originally, I was in favor of having a cap, but as long as the other constraints are in effect as far as the distances and the locations and so on, I no longer have that concern because I think it's a business that will self-regulate itself. They have to make money in order to stay open. So I think they're going to end up not having a plethora of them anyways.
Okay, and Councillor Locke.
Yeah, just last one then. So that's all, even the government store would have to come to this council to get approval to open in our community? Is that correct? They don't have any special dispensation? Because that's what I have a problem with.
Your Worship, Council, anytime you're ever asking about provincial crown corporations, there is a fun question of legal philosophy that we can't tell the province what to do because we are a delegate of the province. On a practical matter, there is a very strong position in British Columbia that municipalities are an elected order of government that must be respected, and so the province voluntarily adheres to our regulations, even though we can't force them to do so. There are other provinces with very different traditions growing, but in BC, municipalities are very much respected by the higher levels of government. I just thought you might like to have here the guidelines from the Ministry of Justice, which notes, in order for a proposed store to be licensed by the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, a store must be provided a positive recommendation from the municipality. And before you make a recommendation, you must consider, take into account the views of local residents. So if you do not make any recommendation, the branch cannot continue, and if you make a negative recommendation, then they cannot issue the permission to open.
I like that clarification. Thank you.
Can you turn your mic off? And Mr. Smith? Oh.
I was just going to add that I can confirm that when we were approached previously, it hasn't been refreshed here, that the province did indicate that they would go through the municipal process. So I can only speak to what the last conversation was.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I'm gonna, do we have a motion on the table? That council directs staff to prepare for council discussion and debate a report to amend section 4.41.3 of the zoning bylaw number 2284/2020, removing the maximum cap of 4 retail cannabis sales stores in the city. Mover? Seconder, okay, and
We're a long ways off. You got readings and then a public hearing.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes, just to be clear, Councillor Christopherson, this is the very beginning of, if you choose to go down it, a fairly long road where the next council meeting we will bring forward a zoning bylaw amendment for multiple readings, then there will be a public hearing, then then there will be more readings, then if it passes all of those stages, you'll look at adoption.
We thought you might. Okay, so I'm going to ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So we await that long report. Now, 8.4, Memorandum of Understanding with Carpere, Canada, and Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. So a company, Carpere Canada, who does industrial pork development across Canada, and I say does that in that they are a very new company, and so they've acquired properties for this purpose in some other places in Canada, but to date no industrial park has gotten to the point of construction yet. They have reached out to council regarding the potential to consider industrial park developments in the Merritt area. Council has had an opportunity to send a delegation down to Richmond to meet with this particular company to understand what their business model and their interest in Merritt is. And they have forwarded to council a memorandum of understanding that, I want to say right off the bat, has absolutely no legal ramifications. And in general, what it says is that the developer will kind of commence some feasibility of the region and consider potential industrial park development in the Merritt area, and what the city would be committing to do, again, in a non-legally binding fashion, is to process zoning applications in a timely manner, to promote the industrial park potentially with them, to introduce them to potential opportunities, but that it acknowledges that there won't be any preferential treatment, that they'll be afforded the same opportunity as any other developer, and to collaborate with them and provide input on designs. So it's I would call it a fairly low risk, low stakes memorandum of understanding to explore a potential industrial park development in Merritt.
And I'm going to ask for input, but let's look at the resolution first. I need a mover and a seconder that council authorize Mayor Brown to sign the attached memorandum of agreement, the memorandum of understanding between the City of Merritt and Carpere Canada Industrial Park Corp. It is. Okay, and did you want to speak to it, Mr. Fair, Councillor Fair?
Yeah, so I do have concerns about this type of investment, because what we're seeing here is that they have several properties that they haven't done anything with so far, and it kind of looks like land prospecting. I see in the, I think I read in the memorandum of understanding that after a year we can revisit. So I think that gives us some room for that. I'd hate to see valuable land sitting unused for years and years at a time.
Thank you. And Councillor Christopherson.
Well, I echo those concerns. That's the issue that I was concerned about. It's that lands are being bought up by this company, but to date, so far as I'm aware of, no development has yet proceeded, and I would like to see something firmer first, so I'm not impressed with trying to go for a memorandum of understanding.
Councillor Luck.
Yeah, it seems like a warm and fuzzy letter, Mr. Smith. I think that's what it kind of saying is, yeah, we'll sit down, have conversations and chit chats. There's no guarantees that they're coming here to buy up our land or anything like that with this memorandum, as I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has a right in Canada to buy land. We can't restrict that, I guess. But was there any red lights that we should be aware of other than what you've kind of mentioned to us?
So from a legal side, the answer is no. What I will say is we will provide a level of service to any developer that comes in, and basically what we're committing to do is literally exactly what we would do with anybody else. And so acknowledging that this isn't going to change the nature of the relationship much one way or the other, but memorandums of understanding, I don't want to say they're completely insignificant in the fact that they do signal an intent to work together. And so, yeah, warm and fuzzy, absolutely. Sometimes memorandums of understanding from private corporations are used to show that, there's kind of tacit support of a local government to work together. They can use it for kind of inducing investment and other things like that. So it's not completely without purpose, but in terms of the level of service that we would be providing, we're not committing to anything extraordinary with this particular memorandum of understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Hearing no more questions? I'll ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, community planner position, Mr. MacArthur.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this particular report is to ask that Council direct staff to include a community planner position in the upcoming financial plan. And the reasoning for this is really the amount of development that we're seeing, and the amount of interest in development that we're seeing. We want to continue providing great customer service, and that's becoming increasingly difficult with the amount of workload that's on staff's plate in the Development Services Department. And I'm not just speaking about the manager position, but also the other staff in the department, the union staff, are really sort of worked to their limits at this current point. So in order to ensure that we have staff that are healthy and can continue performing well, but also that we're providing excellent customer service, staff feel that a junior planner position would make sense to come on board. In terms of the actual cost of that, I did mention earlier that the fees that did receive first, second, and third readings tonight, those fees would go a long way to covering the salary for this position. The other aspect of that is that we currently contract out some services because of just the amount of the sheer work volume. So last year that was in the range of, I believe, around $70,000 of contracted services. This year we've pulled back on that as much as we can. So we're aiming for, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of $35,000 of consultant fees. So it's not an insignificant amount of money that we're spending already on consultants to cover off some of the workload that staff aren't able to get to. So we feel that between those two items, the additional revenues that would come from the development application side, and then the reduced consultant fees, that we can get a long ways to covering the salary for this position.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, okay, let's do a mover and seconder first. That council directs staff to include a community planner position in the proposed 2021-2025 financial plan. So this will start in January, as the position is going to be hopefully starting in January. Mover and seconder, did I hear? Okay. And Councillor Bangu.
Thank you, Mayor. In this situation that we're in, post-COVID, in between and perhaps we might be facing a second shutdown, I'd like to see the city save money and not spend money. Moreover, we might be increasing revenue, but let's have a chance to increase that revenue before we start earmarking it for city purposes. But again, I'd like to see the city save money and not spend money. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Fair.
The direction that this council has given staff is to progress our city, and I see abundant evidence of them doing that on an ongoing basis. And it would be irresponsible of me as a representative of the taxpayer to just bandy about extra staff willy-nilly, but they've shown very clearly that they can go a long way to covering most of that salary, so I definitely support this.
Thank you. And Councillor White.
I feel that the staff are, certainly doing their job, but being out there in the public and listening to the public. If we hire one more staff member, I don't know what'll happen. I'll get my head chopped off. I don't have a problem with carrying on for a little while longer with consultants or bringing someone in to help lighten the load. But I agree with Councillor Bangu that until we know a little bit more as to what's going to happen with our COVID situation, I just can't see that we can commit to another employee right at this time. Thanks.
I'm going to go to Mr. Smith first. He's got his...
Thank you, Your Worship. I recognize that this is a truly extraordinary request, particularly to be doing this outside of the context of budget. This is not something that staff will typically do. However, Don has raised, I think, the key points, but he's also being incredibly modest as to what I see as the largest reason to do this, is that the city has been progressing in its development initiatives in a completely unsustainable fashion. We do not have the levels of staffing to even be providing the levels that we are providing. I'm not going to say the hours of work, but the whole department is doing incredible things, and Don is not just figuratively, but literally doing two people's work. And if we don't provide this, I know what will happen, and it is burnout. I know it. And so he's an incredible person. The department has been doing incredible things, but given the importance of development to council's overall portfolio, I'm saying that if there is one position that you will consider funding and allow us to post for immediately so that we can get somebody for January 1st, this is something that, as the Chief Administrative Officer, it is an absolutely critical, pressing need. Yeah, there's going to be some potential savings, but this is something that we would need to do even if there wasn't consultants coming off or increases of fees. Like, this is something that absolutely needs to happen in order to sustain the current level of service, let alone increase it. But we do hope that this move is going to allow us to increase those levels of service.
Councillor Christopherson. Sorry, Councillor Echard, I'll get you next.
Yeah, I'm very much in favor of this. I think it's been demonstrated how we can save the money, and I think we get way more bang for our buck from having our own personnel working on it than from hiring consultants, as was past practice by several councils. And our staff is doing an exceptionally remarkable job, and if they say they need this and have provided a means of showing that it will pay for itself, go on with it. I'm much in favor of it.
Councillor Richard.
Yeah, thanks for the information. I was kind of thinking about the comments that the CAO said, and it's interesting because I think a lot of industries are quite busy right now. With the pandemic going on, of course, we're all concerned about funding. A funnier phenomenon is that there's movement, and people aren't wanting to be in the crowded places, and a lot of people are wanting to move and develop and build, and they don't want to come to a community where they can't advance. And if they want to have a permit and build their dream home or move away from the city because they can now work from home, but maybe instead of purchasing a condo, they can buy a home or build one. I think that having the planner will be able to move ahead with projects that we want to do, plus some of the new ones. And I think we need to support this. And also there's evidence that we would be saving money on consultants by having the extra staff members. So I think we really have to look big picture. There's a lot of industries that are extremely busy, the finance world, the insurance world, a lot of different industries which we would expect would be quite slow, and they're not, because people are moving or it's interesting. People are staying close to home. They're wanting to build projects and make their backyard something of a place to be and
Make their backyard great again?
make their backyard great again. There you go. Yeah. But definitely people are staying close to home and doing those projects and development. That's what's happening. And if we want to encourage that, I think we have to really consider this position. So I support it. Thank you.
Councillor Luck.
The move out of the big city down the Lower Mainland is on, and it's on full steam ahead. I was sitting in our office one day, and we had 7 calls from people in the Lower Mainland that wanted to move to Merritt. 7 calls in one afternoon. And we know things are happening. There was an interesting article in the Globe and Mail a number of weeks ago about people who are done in the Lower Mainland. They're looking for southern interior towns to move to, southern British Columbia, and move in. We are going to get busy. We hear individuals that still in their community saying, we need a good steakhouse. I still hear that even today after 2 years on the campaign trail. We'll still need that steakhouse. We are not going to get a good steakhouse here until we can get our population up a little bit. We cannot support it with the population we have here. Most of our people still drive out to Kamloops for some of their shopping. That we want people to stay here. We want to provide the services for our local residents. We want to have, I heard today, we don't want this development because we'll get more kids at the school. Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be fantastic to have more children going to a school? Wouldn't that be amazing for our community to have another school here to keep our children that move away into our community? So as much as I don't like the idea of having to hire any staff at this particular time, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to be really tight in other departments right now, but this is an area. This is like you're in a downturn, you put your money into marketing. And this is what we're doing here when we're hiring a new staff in our planning department. We are marketing, and we need to market even stronger than we are right now, as much as we've been doing really well. But I'm going to support this position, and it'll be a little tougher on some of the other departments. It's going to, when we look at that. But this one is marking our community. Good things are happening. I still look back at March. If this COVID hadn't hit, I think Merritt would have been booming right now. But it's slowly coming back, and we're on the cusp of great things here in Merritt. And so this position is much needed here. The work that Don's, I don't know how he's done it, to tell you the truth. It's been just unbelievable. When I'm out in the community, talk to investors, and then I praise Don, and I don't even need to. They come to me and tell me what a great job is Don doing. So we need to have him to get that help we need. So I'm supporting this position.
I've been at other places where I've heard other mayors from other cities saying, oh my goodness, you guys have a new zoning bylaw, and I've seen documents on your OCP, and it's just amazing, and I get to brag, and I really like it. But I know the stakes are high. Those restaurants are coming, steak restaurants, right? And I know that you're going to need help to move you to a position where you can do all of it. You can't do all of it on your own. And I am getting calls from the public saying, they're missing the call, and it's starting to show. And I'm worried not about what the phone call that's not going back. I'm not worried about that, but I am. But I'm worried about your health. And I am voting absolute yes, because I believe without that, you can't make it. Nobody can work the hours that you work and function normally after a year. It's just not possible. So, and I know that the consultants we have, you still have to take a lot of time to work with them through the project. They're not just going to take the project on and go away and do it. So I'm absolutely in favor of getting another planner in that department for all the reasons that we've stated here. Councillor White.
I just want to make it clear that I'm not denying the help, because I understand the load of work. I'm just curious as to why we can't, and consultant for me was the wrong word, contractor, why can't we hire a contractor for a year and then look at the situation and see how everything goes, and then add the position if you really feel it's needed. That's where I'm going with it, because once that position's in place, what happens when things slow down?
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
Councillor Bangu, can I have you turn your chair, please? I really don't like looking at your back.
I can sit any which way I wish.
I'm asking you.
This way. This is why I'm sitting this way. It's not to disrespect you, but you continuously asking me to sit a particular way is very disrespectful. So please stop. Thank you.
No, excuse me. This is a council table, and the chair is asking you to turn around and face the rest of the council members.
This way because it's most comfortable. It's helping my stomach. This is why I'm sitting this way. So thank you.
We do have
Point of order.
procedure protocol. I'm having difficulty with a councillor just absolutely ignoring my request.
Thank you for the request, but I'm sitting in a comfortable manner that's healthy for me.
Okay, I'm sitting in a comfortable way too.
You know, that's fine. You can sit that way. And I'm facing
Okay.
the audience. I can see the staff.
You can do that. I can't see.
Speaking, I look at everybody that's speaking. So, I don't understand.
I'm asking the request for you to face your council when we are discussing and when you're discussing. That's what I'm asking.
Is there a policy or procedure that says that I must look a certain way when I'm speaking?
Mr. Lewis?
Your Worship, Councillors, the Council Procedure Bylaw has sections. Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, Council Procedure Bylaw has Section 16, the Rules of Conduct and Debate, where Section C involves no member shall speak disrespectfully towards any member or use offensive words or speak beside the question, leave their seat, make any noise or disturbance while the vote is being taken or interrupt anyone speaking or disobey the rules of council or resist a decision of council on questions of order, interpretation or practice. And then notes, if the mayor or other person presiding at a meeting of council considers a person is guilty of improper conduct, the person presiding may expel and exclude the other person from the meeting. Those are essentially our rules on procedural respect towards each other in this chamber.
Thank you. Okay, where were we? Are we in the middle of, we've got the motion on the table? Are we ready to speak to it, or are we ready to vote on it? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Agreement to remove or demolish 2082 Aspen Street. Mr. MacArthur. Oh, I guess I should help you along there.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so the property owners at 2082 Aspen Street came to the Development Services Department and indicated that they wanted to relocate or locate a new modular home on their property. However, they have a current duplex on the property, and they want to continue living in the duplex while the construction of the new home occurs, the foundation work and the siting of the modular home. However, staff cannot approve that because the zoning bylaw indicates that you can't have two homes on a property simultaneously. So in order to allow this couple to continue living on their property while they go through the construction process, it requires an agreement to be executed. So that's what this agreement is, or this resolution is asking, to allow the mayor and CAO to execute the agreement.
And I think we had a precedent on this just during our term that we've allowed that to happen. Anyone want to, let's move it first. Can I have a mover for that council accepts the agreements to remove or demolish the mobile home at 2082 Aspen Street following the issuance of an occupancy permit for the new dwelling, and that council authorizes the mayor and CAO to execute the agreement on behalf of the city? Okay, thank you. And Councillor Etchart, did you want to speak to this?
We already have a precedent on this because we had a similar situation on Williams Crescent earlier this year. And actually, this makes sense because in that neighborhood, it's mostly frame homes that are there. And then, of course, with our new A277 bylaw requirement for modular homes, it would fit in with the neighborhood. It would, really, like, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, it just makes sense to me that we would do that because now it's more conforming to the neighborhood. But anyway, thank you.
We're not really approving of what they're doing with what they're building. We're just approving of the residents to stay there, or that building to stay on the property. So they have 3 on the property until they. There's the second one. If you look at page 2, there is a 2 there already. Any other comments on this? Okay. I'm going to ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Notices of motion. Councillor Luck.
Okay, in light of a few of the things that we've heard this evening and a few of the concerns going around the community, I'd like to move a motion that a long-term water supply study, including the use of Nicola Lake as a supply source, be undertaken by the staff. I'll discuss it more in late moment.
Okay. And no other notices of motion? Okay. And reports from council? Councillor Fair.
Yeah, I'd just like to note that I have noticed recently an increase in the number of groups I see walking around downtown not wearing masks, large groups up to 20 people. So I'm just hoping that the media will report that so that we can at least put it in people's minds that, you know, walking around in groups like that, they should be wearing masks, people shoulder to shoulder, having conversations, etc. I'm just hoping that'll get out there so that, yeah, maybe it'll make some improvement. Thank you.
Councillor Luck.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the Loggers Board Show group committee for putting together a pretty good show. They were in an awkward situation on this year with the Logger Show being shut down in September, but they were able to pull off a pretty good show under the circumstances, which I won't go to get into here. But they did a pretty good job over there. I'd like to thank the rodeo grounds for helping out and all the volunteers that pulled that together. And Mayor, for you coming out and saying a few words on the opening night and everything. So just really want to thank those that came out. Looked like everybody that came out, we had various numbers of cars there because we hadn't done it in cars, so they came out, they really enjoyed the show, and they did a pretty good job of that. So I just want to thank all the volunteers for that, Mayor. They did a great job.
Thanks. Any other report? Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to information items. The City of Merritt PNP committee. There's just a committee report on how many numbers we've had over the last little while. And Mr. Smith, can I count on you reminding us to have that committee of the whole meeting? I shouldn't even have to ask that.
He's got her down.
There's also,
I did catch Manuel and Tom on the way out to discuss theoretical meeting dates, so I would anticipate that either November 3rd or November 17th, you guys will have something coming your way, and we'll discuss that in the near future.
Thank you. Well, that was quick. It's quicker than I expected, that's for sure. Okay. And then there's the North Bench Neighbourhood Development Plan update. Mr. MacArthur?
Thank you, Your Worship. So this particular report was to address the survey results for the North Bench Plan. 383 residents responded to the survey, and the survey is attached to the report. So I won't go through it in detail, but there was a presentation earlier this evening, so I just wanted to address some of the items that were brought up in regards especially to communication and information, just so council is aware and the community is aware of how to access information and what we're doing to do that. First of all, in terms of trying to engage with the public on this particular project, it is a bit difficult during COVID. It's hard to have in-person workshops and that sort of thing, and certainly we were able to find a way with the public hearing earlier this evening, but some of the consultants weren't comfortable coming and having those face-to-face communications at this time. So it becomes difficult to do that. We did try to find other means thus far to meet with people, and we had a webinar last week on the North Bench Plan that was quite well attended. I believe we had on the call upwards of 40 people that attended the session. So evidently people are finding out how to attend these events. We also had a pop-up booth in early September at the Farmers Market on Quilchena Avenue, where I attended, as well as other staff were there to answer questions, and a lot of those questions were in reference to the North Bench Plan. Of course, we had this survey where, as I mentioned, 383 people responded. We brought hard copy surveys as well to that farmers market so that anyone who didn't want to or wasn't able to answer the survey online had the opportunity, and almost 40 people filled out hard copy surveys that were provided to them and dropped them back off at City Hall, so that was excellent. Of course, we've been promoting this on our website. We have a dedicated webpage for the North Bench Plan, and on that we put all of the information. So this survey results are there live, and Will has it up here so you can see. So the presentation is there. We'll have the webinar up here. So all of those items are here, and that's all promoted through our social media channels as well. So whenever we have these types of items, that goes out through social media. Of course, there have been newspaper ads in reference to the North Bench Plan, and also articles by our illustrious media that are here tonight, and I'm sure they'll have some more to say on that. So yeah, so there
You're
are...
going to get a page of your own.
So yeah, so there are a number of ways that we're trying to engage. We're trying to meet with people in as many ways possible. I will mention as well that in the utility bill mail-out that's going out later this month, we're going to have more information on the North Bench Plan, as well as the official community plan and active transportation plan, so that residents across the city will have more information, and will also know how to access information through our website, etc. And there will be also additional engagement events this fall. With the official community plan, we're going to have neighborhood specific workshops. We're hoping that with COVID, depending on what happens, we might be able to do face-to-face meetings if we can structure it that way. If not, then we would go the webinar route again. But there will be additional engagement opportunities as well. So staff are trying to find as many ways possible to engage with residents as we can on this. So I just wanted to make that clear, that there are a number of ways to access information for this project.
And it is difficult to engage with some of the seniors that just don't do online much of anything. I know you've taken a couple of seniors and made online gurus out of us. Okay, enough of the lies. Thank you, Don. Mr. MacArthur. Councillor Christopherson.
Yeah, I'd just like to also thank Mr. MacArthur and staff for trying so hard to get the information out to people during these difficult times. I think there are still some misperceptions out there as to what is going on, but I'm very, very much in favor of looking at the benchlands and trying to provide some direction. I would rather provide for controlled development as part of city planning than to deal with piecemeal plans thrown at us by various developers. We've had times in the past where the benchlands were proposed for industrial development and so on. And I'm delighted that we're looking at plans that, yes, there will probably be residential, there may even be small neighborhood stores up there and a school, but a vast portion of that land is going to be preserved for community use, for trail use and recreational use, and I can't say enough that this is a goal that I think the city will look back on in later years, and it'll be like the Stanley Park that was never approved of when it was first proposed for Vancouver, and look at it now, and we've got a chance to have a jewel in our backyard. So thank you. I'll stop talking.
And if I may just add to that, also special kudos to our communications manager for helping to get this information out, because it's a lot of work for Will specifically to get all of this up on our website and through social media, et cetera. So.
Yes, there's been a lot of communications out there over the last little while. Councillor Luck.
Just last word is ditto for what Councillor Christopherson said, and something is going to happen up there, so what we need to do is get those people that are struggling with that concept, to get them on board and see how we can incorporate their ideas and plans in there. But great job, and it is a tough piece, that communication thing, to get that out there and everybody understand. But thank you for all the work you guys are doing. That's great.
Well, that brings us to the end. Oh, I was hoping to have another couple of hours at this. Yeah. I am terminating this meeting.